So welcome everybody. Welcome to JPWC 94's third interview. We have Ranjith here. Ranjith, we're here with us today to talk about mental health in different cultures and parenthood. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you for having me, Jack.
So, what's your connection with mental health, and why is it important to you?
I'm a qualified therapist. I've been qualified since last November. Something I wanted to do for a very long time now. I followed that passion about 4 years ago. Um, there isn't much representation, especially male representation in my community. There's only been a handful of people that I've come across. I just felt quite passionate about making that step into becoming a counselor myself.
Okay, thank you. So we'll start with parenthood. Are you married and do you have kids?
Yeah, so I am married. I've been married for about, 8 years now. And I've got two young kids. I've got a 1-year-old and a 4-year-old.
That must be quite a handful.
It keeps me busy, man. It definitely keeps me busy.
Definitely. And how has having a family affected your mental health?
So I guess there's quite a lot to unpack there. So I guess even before, becoming a parent, just one string of it is I wanted to make sure, I wanted to get it right. I wanted to be ready to have a child, and that meant physically and mentally in the right place. And you kind of think to yourself, what is the right place? Physically, because my parents, they're in their my dad's in his mid 70s, and there was a certain point in his life that he wasn't kind of able to keep up with me because I think just age and health conditions just kind of creeped up on him. So I think for me, it always was a thing for me of, right, you know what, I want to be able to look after myself, but also be in a place where I can play with my kids. I can be there for my kids. So I think I had that pressure on myself that I want to be ready. But there is no sort of perfect line, in where you need to be in order to be um, the right parent for a child, I guess. So there was that part. I definitely put that pressure on myself before getting married as well. Uh, I think I was quite nervous. There's that nervousness of getting married because you now it's not just about me. It's about me coming together with another person who's choosing to trust me and spend the rest of their life with me, right? So I wanted to make sure that um, I took that sort of responsibility quite seriously. So there was that pressure, that definitely a pressure that I put on myself on both sides of things. Um, and now having a family, being a parent, I think it's in terms of my mental health, there have been many times where I've just wanted to throw in the towel because of the pressure of trying to spin many plates at once. So being a father, being a husband, being a being a good father, being a good husband, being a good son to my parents, being a good in every other aspect of my life and available with friendship groups, with work. So I think having the additional pressure of having a family, well, not pressure, but having that additional responsibility of having a family did feel like I had pressure because I wanted to do good by everyone, and I didn't want to fail them, and I didn't want to even give a space to fail them. And I think that's something that I've always put on myself. Um, I don't take it lightly having children. It's a responsibility that I've chosen to have. They did not want to come into this world. I've chosen to have them. So with that comes the responsibility of, you know what, I need to do right by them. I need to be available for them. And it is about obviously providing financially, but also providing emotionally and in terms of quality time. Um, yeah, there's a lot that's come from it. And it's not always the case that I can voice that out because I don't want to worry my partner, but at the same time, I don't get the time that I used to speak to my friends as regularly because everyone's so busy. Everyone's so busy. But when I do get the chance, I do try and speak to people. So there is that accountability as well. So it's not just I'm trying to be a lone wolf. And I quickly, really realize that's not the way to live. So there have been times when I've reached burnout and I felt
Mm.
like the Jenga blocks have just come tumbling down. But I've realized that I can't, using that same meta sort of analogy, I'm not able to build that Jenga tower back up myself. I've had to have other people come in to put pieces in as well to help me build it up in the best way possible.
Yeah, that can't be easy. I mean, it's a lot of pressure to obviously put on yourself. And I think you won't be alone in feeling like that. I think many parents, especially the male side of the relationship, will definitely feel that way. Anyway, so, so given all that you've just told me, how do you cope with that?
Yeah, like I said, I think the biggest thing is having accountability, having people that I can turn to. When I feel like I'm reaching a point where I can't handle things, or I feel like I'm about to burn out, or there's too much pressure, then the first person I'll go to and try and speak to is my partner, because I think it's only fair that she's aware of what's going on because she's involved so deeply into it. So I will try and speak to her, but with certain things where I'll have to be honest that I only feel that another man can understand where I'm coming from, I would go to, a close set of friends that I have that I would go to, right? And they're the sort of people I would go to, not necessarily for advice, but just as somewhere to offload. And you know what I've realized as well, it's not always that a lot of us are looking for advice. It might just be that just being able to, vocalize it is enough. Is just being able to vocalize it helps me to process things a bit more, helps me to understand that helps me to get out some of the loudness in my head, right? And tell other people what's been going on. And also it's helped me because I realize that I'm not on my own. There's other people around me that are going through similar things as well. And I think knowing that I'm doing it in that sort of uh there are other people that are going through it as well, it kind of fills me with a bit more comfort, that I'm not the only one struggling or facing these challenges. So accountability is one of them. The other one as well is self-care. So personal self-care for me, and I try and advocate this to other people as well, is just to block out a little bit of time, even if it's 10, 15 minutes. Ideally it'll be every day, but as regularly as possible to just take time for yourself or for myself. And that might be me going for a walk, me listening to some music, reading a book, going to the gym. Everyone has their own thing, right? So for me, it's listening to music, stepping out of the house, and stepping away from this environment. As positive as this environment is with my family, it's also the place where you know I can just get stuck in because I work from home. So where I sleep, where I work, where I spend time with my family is all in these four walls. Sometimes it can get a bit too much. There's no separation at all. So the, the time I can step away from home is, it's a breather. It's a breath of fresh air. At the same time, I go to the gym as well, which is another breath of fresh air as well. Stepping on into the gym, I can leave my worries and my thoughts at the door. And I'm being honest, I'm not even saying that as a cliche. I can genuinely leave it there as I walk in. And I don't think about anything else for that 1 hour.
Yeah, it gives your mind that focus, doesn't it? And yeah, I know, as you say, it is quite a cliche to say exercise in the gym and everything helps, but it
Yeah.
doesn't even have to be anything like that. It's just something to focus your mind on that's just you in the moment, there and then, doing it, rather than the constant day-to-day mind thoughts that are rushing in all the time. You just need to, I think, yeah, shut that off. Um, with today's world, um, more and more young people obviously have anxiety, are diagnosed with depression.
Mm.
Does that concern you as a parent? And how do you deal with that?
I think it concerns me not just as a parent, but also as if I know someone in my life that's dealing with that, it'll probably concern me, and I'd want to obviously be there for them. But as a parent, especially, how I'll deal with that, I honestly don't know how I'll deal with that. If I'm being or very honest with you, I think all I know I'll really try to do is is provide reassurance to my child.
Yeah.
Be able to tell them and show them that they can talk to me. And I think that's the most important thing, or the biggest thing I can do is kind of bridge the gap of something that I wasn't able to have growing up. There wasn't much of a space where it was, let's talk about your mental health. Let's have quite a candid conversation. And that's not down to um, let's say ignorance, but it's just lack of education. It wasn't just something that it was a priority from when, my parents were growing up. So yeah, I think the way I'll try and deal with that is be
Mm.
available to listen, be available to be able to share my own experiences as well. And I think there's a lot in being able to share your own experiences and how you've been able to overcome some of those challenging and difficult experiences. Again, knowing that you're not on your own. So I think I'll try and take it from that perspective.
Yeah, because I think, well, as you say, I mean, it's not even we're not having a go at our own parents or the other generations. It's just that it wasn't spoken about then. So they didn't have to deal with it. So we didn't have that sort of safe space that we could go for our parents. I'm sure they would have been there if we needed them. But how do you talk about something that's never been mentioned in the family before? It's difficult. I mean, even when I was diagnosed with anxiety and depression, my parents didn't know how to deal with that, didn't know it
Mm.
existed. Um, so it's difficult for them. So I think it's important for your generation, my generation, other generations below us to open up that door to be more of a safe space around it and speak more to their kids about it.
Yeah, 100%. I think that's one thing that I try to practice as much as I can is to talk to my daughter about as much as possible, or just try and make things clear, in a way, um, in that she does have a space to talk to me. She's only 4, I get it. She's really young, but she's really. I do not put anything past, children and how much they're able to process. I can really remember things of when I've got really vivid, like very clear memories from when I was 2 or 3 years old of when I used to, when I've seen my parents argue, right? And they're like things that I remember like they happened yesterday. So, those are the sort of things that make me think twice about how I respond to my daughter, in how I communicate with my daughter and what she sees in the family home as well. Because it
Yeah,
can be quite uncomfortable and traumatic for children who grow up around a home where there are arguments, where there is verbal, physical abuse. So, and that can have long-lasting effects. It may not be triggering always at the time, but they hold it. They can really hold it in them, and it can trigger them at a later stage in life. And it may not always be, it can be quite confusing. So I'm very conscious about that with my children, and especially with my daughter, who's at that age where I was when I can remember a lot of these memories. So I try to, if let's say we've had a difficult moment, and I have told her off. I try to create a space where I can speak to her about it and say, do you know why I talked to you like, do you know why I told you off? And I don't want to talk to you like that. How did that make you feel? And it's quite big questions, I understand. But sometimes I'm able to get through to her. Sometimes she's able to get her point across to me. And sometimes it doesn't work, but I'm still going to try.
yeah. Well, I mean, you've got to have that door open. And as you say, you've got to try with that. I mean, I think people don't realize how much kids pick up on. I mean, I wouldn't have a clue, obviously not being a parent, but they do pick up and you do retain a lot that you actually wouldn't even think you do. Even looking back at my childhood, there's things that I remember that I shouldn't really, because it was
Mm.
donkeys ago. I can barely remember what I had for dinner last week, but I can remember something when I was 4 or 5. It's ridiculous, but
It's
yeah,
pretty intense, man. Like I think about it, as a parent, I have a list of things that I want to try and protect my daughter from, or um not do basically around my daughter. For example, I always told myself this, I want to try and minimize the if me and my wife are arguing, I want to try and minimize if the chances where my daughter could see that happening, right?
yeah,
But like I am putting all these things in place where I'm trying to protect her from seeing any of these things. But again, there might be one thing where I might just do. I might just say something to her that I might not have like put a lot of weight on, but she might hold on to it
hmm
for the rest of her life. And it kind of made me understand that it's very difficult to protect your children from everything, right, in the home. But obviously I'm going to try my best. But you can't stop them from holding on to something that might mean yeah, that might really affect them, but I'm going to try my best.
of course. Um, so you've kind of answered that one. So what advice would you give to a parent who is worried about their kids' mental health or even their own?
I think from personal experience, if you're worried about your kids' mental health, and probably a lot of the parents do this already, right? And I can imagine so a lot of them must be proactive, but is try and talk to your children, talk to your children, and I think that's the first place to start. I found for me it has been the most beneficial thing is create a dialogue and bridge that sort of gap between yourself and that child. You never know where that conversation might take you. But if you still feel quite concerned, is reach out for professional support. There's and see if there's some sort of professional help that you can get as well if you are that concerned about your child. And talk to other parents as well. I think there's a lot of value in speaking to other parents and people that have gone through this sort of similar experience because they can shed some wisdom, shed some light as well, in a way, in a perspective that as a parent, that I might not be able to see. So that's one thing. And it's the same thing with, you know, if I was looking at my own mental health and saying, if you're looking at your own mental health as a parent, as an adult, it's the same things, man. Is talk to someone, talk to your friends, your partner, someone that you can trust, that is just going to listen to you, and someone that makes you feel like you're being heard. And also seek out professional help as well if that's something you feel that you need as well.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, thank you for sharing all that. So moving on to the cultural impact on mental health. Obviously, we're human and everyone is affected by mental health differently.
Mm.
Do you think cultures deal with it differently, and how can that be an impact on mental health?
Yeah, going by my own experience alone. So I grew up in a Sri Lankan household, Sri Lankan community. And like I said, in my home growing up, mental health wasn't really a conversation that we had. It wasn't something that would be at it wouldn't be something that we picked up, if that makes sense. And I think a lot of it comes back to the sort of priorities that my family and a lot of the Sri Lankan Tamil diaspora had, when they migrated to this country, but also with what that had gone through back home in Sri Lanka as well. You know, from what I understand of my parents, they very much had a let's crack on mentality. You didn't have time to sit back and process emotions, or you didn't have time to identify emotions, or that will kind of identify that, okay, this feeling is being caused by this, and this is what I need to do to deal with it. It was very much a let's just crack on. We have to survive because of there was a civil war in Sri Lanka. We have to survive, or we have mouths to feed. So we haven't got time. to sit around and talk about these things or process these things. And that very much carried on here, not in the mentality of we're not going to talk about it, Ranjit. It was very much we don't know where to start, or we don't know how to kind of how to discuss this with you. And I genuinely think that's what it was with my parents. They just didn't know how to discuss it. So and I think culturally it just wasn't something that they would do either. Culturally, within a South Asian household, you wouldn't uh, the father figure in would be could be a stoic figure. So it was quite rare that you would have. So my dad never had that relationship with his dad where they would talk about emotions. It was very much you would talk only if you were kind of spoken to, and they would do sports together. He was a great role model as a father for my dad. But there was no open dialogue, and that's all my dad knew. So that's all my dad knew how to what to carry on with. So culturally, that's all my granddad grew up with, and that's what my dad grew up with, and that's what was passed on to me. And it can be a blocker, it can be a blocker because it makes you feel like your your feelings may not be validated. A space is not being given to actually freely talk about what you want to talk about, and purely not because it's done out because they don't want to, it's because they don't know how to. And I genuinely think that's what it
Mm.
is. You know,
Yeah, I think, well, I mean, you pick up nowadays, I think it's easier to pick up more parenting things from society because we have online, because we have social media, because the world's a bit more open. But I think with our parents' generations before, you learned how to parent from your parents. Um,
yeah,
if they didn't do something, you didn't know how to do it. So I think that is definitely going to be a factor. Um, and they did the best they could, and they are good parents. Again, we're not definitely not bashing on previous generations. It's just it was done differently. It was a different
yeah,
world,
yeah.
and I think especially being in a different country, different cultures, has that impact on the way things are done. I so what sort of things would you say culturally, racially, religiously impacts on your mental health the most, and how does someone deal with that within their own culture and religion?
I think it's culturally, it's having a lot of the cultural pressures passed on to you from past generations, and just things that don't marry up with how I've been brought up. So, for example, the best way to put it is, I feel like I've been brought up in two different worlds, right? So at home, growing up in the UK, I was brought up in a Sri Lankan family. So I embraced my Sri Lankan, my Tamil culture, my Tamil upbringing, the values of being brought up in that community. But then when I step out, when I grow up in school life, in work, day to day, I'm a Londoner. I'm born and bred a Londoner. So there's two different great cultures and great places that I can say I come from that have shaped me to be who I am today. But then I've had the opportunity to pick things that I like and dislike from both sides, which obviously has given me an opportunity to kind of like to be able to rebel, with some of the
Yes.
things that I don't agree with in the sort of family upbringing. And when those sort of things happen, when it that can have an impact on your mental health, purely because you don't want to culturally I've been brought up to think I do not want to dishonor my family. I want to do right by my parents. That is what you do as a Tamil man, right? As a Tamil woman. That is what you do for your parents as a South Asian community. And doing anything different, you're dishonoring them. You're doing wrong by them. You're not being a good parent. There's these sort of ideas that you kind of create in your head, or they kind of stick with you, or being the good parent, or the good child, sorry. So that's what really affected my mental health, really, is not being not doing right by my parents, but I wanted to also do right by myself. I wanted to be true to myself. I wanted to not I didn't want to sacrifice that as well, you know. But at the same
It's
time,
almost like
I
a
felt bad.
battle.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a constant battle, yeah.
Yeah, that can't be easy. So, over the years, how would you say you've learned to deal with that battle? Who wins, or how do you find the middle ground?
I think you learn to um I think what I learned quickly was I needed to go therapy. So I turned to therapy and I was able to practice kind of figure out a lot of those things and understand quite quickly where I would kind of put my foot down, but also I think value myself a lot more, value what I needed to do for myself, and realize that I can't live for somebody else all my life, you know. And I think that, you know, I'm not disrespecting them, I'm not dishonoring them. All it means is I am accepting that I have my own life, right? And I have my own life that I want to choose how to live as well, but also live it in such a way where I can still show love to them and I can still respect them without feeling like I'm failing them. So therapy gave me a space to be able to explore that quite clearly.
Well, I think, yeah, I think a lot of people could resonate with that battle, obviously, with the whole parent thing, um, because you don't want to fail your parents, but at the end of the day, as you say, you can't live through someone else, and you can't live life based on what someone else wants to achieve for you. And I think you've got to respect yourself enough to choose your own. Okay, so what advice would you give to someone that is dealing with cultural and religious or racial impacts on their mental health?
Again, I think it's no, for me, it's no real difference from what I said earlier about is to seek out um, support from other people, is speak to like-minded people in your community, people that you know you can trust and open up to. So they understand that you're going through something like this, you know, whatever it might be, the challenges at the time. And also, I think there are organizations out there as well that can kind of provide support and and guidance in this area. And finally, seek professional help if you really feel like there is a gap, you know, and you feel like there is a real need for that sort of professional support to get through a difficult time in your life.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much. Obviously, there is no culture, religion, or race that has got this right, because the numbers are way too high still. As we can say, we're all human, we're all affected, and the more we talk, the more we open up, regardless of background, it will it will make a difference. So thank you so much for talking to me today. Please, to everyone that's been watching, please like, follow, share, get involved with this. If you want to be a volunteer for any interviews, please let me know. Um, it's a great cause to support. So thank you for joining us today, Ranjit.
Yeah, thank you for having me, Jack.
No worries. So we'll speak to you soon.
Yeah, take care, man.
Take care. Hi guys, so we did just finish our interview with Ranjit. Thank you for watching. It was such an amazing interview, so insightful. Um, if you do need professional help, he is a trained therapist, so please check out his page, and maybe even use his services because he's clearly fantastic at his job, and clearly has such experience um, dealing with the mental health and stuff. So reach out, use your friends, your family, but if you need that professional help, there's an option. Um, I will tag him in the post on Instagram that we're going to put out. The interview was 30 minutes long, so we're not going to be able to post it all on Instagram because that'll be seven. Oh, pardon me. It'll be 7 parts, and I'm not about to try and fight with Instagram for that. So we will be posting it to YouTube. There was some technical problems. Apologies to that, Ranger, and thank you for your patience with that.
And thank you guys for your patience with watching it. Wasn't as smooth as it could have been, but it's still a fantastic interview, and I didn't want to cut it down when that 10-minute warning came up, because the recording was in the other room, and unfortunately I didn't think about going to turn the warning off, as I thought that only came up on the host screen, not the participants. So yeah, that was a bit awkward, but you can still hear us, and everything he said was so important that I don't want to cut this down. So that's why that's just how it is. The meeting did cut off after the 10 minutes, so we had to restart just to finish off. So there is that little gap there as well. Also, there was a problem at the beginning that I'd forgot to put my phone on charge, so I had to quickly run into the other room and put it on charge. So these things happen. I mean, this is the first one I've done by Zoom, and Ranjith was perfectly professional about all of it, and the perfect gent. So thank you so much for getting involved, Ranjith. It is really, really appreciated, and all of you guys as well for watching. And please keep liking, sharing, donating. We're going to keep going. We're going to keep pushing forward. It's so important that we do this. So yeah, I will speak to you guys soon. Have a great day, and have a great mental health day. Take care.